Welcome, everybody, to another JordanCon interview. I am joined today by Erik Nunnally, who was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. He served a tour in the Marine Corps before deciding that art school might have been a safer pursuit, probably. He enjoys art, comics, and genre novels. As a graphic designer, he's also trained in Krav Maga, Muay Thai kickboxing, which, basically means just don't make Erik mad. Got it. Whatever you need at the con, I'm all yours. His work has appeared in several anthologies, and he best describes his work as dark pulp. Welcome, Erik. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thanks. I can't wait to finally get to meet you at the con, but let's jump right into these interview questions. So first off, I just want to thank you for your service, and I want to truly just thank everybody, all past, present, even future service members. Depending on when you watch this, it's a fantastic thing that you guys do.
You're welcome. I was doing it anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just I haven't served, but I've reaped the rewards of being able to live in this country, and I do appreciate it. So I heard from a lot of friends who've served and family members, my cousin in particular, who was also a Marine, that the books that get sent over, a lot of people will donate, be it brand new books or, old, like, oh, I don't read this anymore. Let me send this to the soldiers over to, people who are deployed, or even just, I don't know how they get divvied out. Maybe you can let into that. But the books become a little bit of a commodity. They get traded around, and, books that people like, they get referred. My cousin was in there was a small group of people that was really into science fiction and fantasy, and they were trading books around. Did you have any kind of experiences like that when you were in the service, or?
hmm well, two things. My service preceded the modern habit of people doing that,
Oh,
because we didn't have the extended deployments and stuff.
yeah.
That stuff actually started happening right when I got out of the Marine Corps.
Ah,
Yeah, so a whole lot of people I know ended up doing these extended tours in the Middle East and stuff like that. However, um, in the Marine Corps, you do 18-month floats, what are called 18-month floats.
mm-hmm.
You're out with the Navy, going to different countries and stuff, and on whichever ship you're on,
Yeah.
there's a library, and I'm pretty sure a small library,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure that a lot of that stuff ends up getting coordinated through there.
Yeah.
So any of those materials would be available for anybody to get their hands on. And yeah, that's how I think that would be handled.
Okay.
I'm speculating a bit, but if it's intended for whomever, then
Yeah.
it should be available for anybody to read.
Okay.
That'd be the way to do it.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you
Well,
have any kind of did your interest in science fiction and fantasy predate your time in the service, or
oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. As long as I can remember, really. And when I was in the service, at the time, the science fiction book club was still a thing, and I had been a member, I think, at that point for a decade, because I was a member through high school and stuff, and then it followed me around in the Marine Corps, and I ended up being a member of that book club for over 20 years. Yeah, yeah. Before it got a little, it got reorganized, got a little weird and scammy, because it had to compete with Amazon and all
Yeah.
that stuff that was coming up. But before that, I got a lot of books through that. The only awkward thing is that they're all hardcovers.
Yeah.
And so I would have to go to like local bookstores to get like a paperback that would fit in a cargo pocket versus,
Fair enough.
mm,
What was your gateway drug into the science fiction fantasy world as a kid, or?
my mother actually used to read comic books to me, and it's not
I'm
that she
jealous.
was a huge comic book enthusiast or anything, but this was let's see, that would have been the early '70s at the time. So my mom would see these in the spinner racks, in
Yep.
various small stores, and would buy a few. So I remember her reading Thor and the Fantastic Four and the Hulk to me when I was, 4 or 5 years old. And it just continued from there. And I would start walking. It was about a mile and a half to this store, Sonny's Cigar Store in Mattapan Square, that had the spinner rack there. And as anybody who's read comics that long knows, it's very difficult to keep up with,
Oh yeah.
because they don't give a damn.
Nah.
They're just putting comics in the rack. So
Yeah.
trying to keep up with the continuity was very difficult. And I think I got sick of that at some point and started doing the first subscriptions where they would mail them to you
on the back
before
of
any
the
comic
comics.
shop that opened up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the gateway drug. Yeah, usually comic stuff.
That's pretty cool that your mom would read them to you. My mom would just kick me out of the house and tell me to go play out in the play out with the kids on the block before, and wouldn't want me to stay inside. But yeah, no, I mean I remember those spinner racks. There was a deli not far from my house that I used to go to all the time. But speaking of growing up as a kid and where you grew up, so you're from Boston. I'm from New York. You know. It's okay though. I agreed to this interview still. You know, it's under No, I'm just joking.
Yeah. It's all right. I hate New York. It's fine.
I do too. That's why I live in Florida. It's not that much better here, but it's cheaper, so that's nice. No, yeah, I honestly I don't follow like New York sports that much. Except I mean I grew up liking the Giants, but like I'm not like into the whole Yankee Red Sox debacle. My wife is a huge Red Sox fan, which to my dad's disliking, and then my best friends are huge Patriots fans, and we go to like all the way I watch all the Patriots games and all that stuff, and I don't care.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of football, and that's I watched football until about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And that's when it was in that period that I was just doing more things, and we had started a family, and I didn't have time to put my butt on the couch and watch 3 or 4 hours of sports, right? Because it's not that it's really empty entertainment for me, because I'm not making a living doing anything related to it all. It's just nothing. Yeah. And nobody else was interested in football. So there was just kind of constant interruptions and stuff. Yeah. And I was going to be better off using that time to write or draw or design something. So that, slowly but surely that kind of faded away. And then there was, and not that these controversies didn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, they've been around forever.
Yeah. But they, more popularized not only the head injuries, but the behavior of the players and the behavior of the ownership. I just soured on the whole thing.
I definitely get that. I mean, I myself stopped watching college football years ago when my friends started getting into college, and I started really seeing the dynamics with, the college sport organizations and really how they exploit the players, and it's I mean it's there to a level on the professional side too, but at least they get paid, so it's bad, but we digress. So you mentioned doing art. I know you're a graphic designer as well, so as a kid, what came first? Was it or did they kind of come together? Was it like the love of art and storytelling? Did they kind of come together, or were you just like drawing a character one day and you made up a backstory and you were like, hey, I want to write more about that?
Well, the part of Boston I grew up in was Mattapan. It was very much a black neighborhood, and it's not that there was nobody there doing this stuff. I didn't know anybody there doing this stuff. Like, everybody would always be surprised that I had as many books as I had, or, at the time, comic books were kind of, people would look down their nose at comics, funny books. Now it's $1 billion industry because of all of it's source material for all this other more popular media.
Yeah.
And so, I would draw and write this stuff, and, I'd read books, and I had absolutely no idea how to engage with this stuff except as a reader, because I didn't know anybody. The internet didn't exist.
Yeah.
Libraries at the time, all the professional teaching and interest things were kind of, genre stuff.
Yeah, and you had to kind of go find them. It wasn't like readily available like it is now.
Yeah. And I didn't know where to look, and none of my teachers were interested. Like, my art teachers and stuff would be like, yeah, comics, that's cute.
Yeah.
But Yeah, everything was dismissed.
Of course.
So by the time I got to art school, after, it's funny, I was not supposed to become a graphic designer because um, I had a real interest in animation.
Okay.
Like, I just really enjoyed cartoons and comic strips and stuff like that. And I couldn't find anywhere that did animation. And again, this is pre-internet, so it wasn't like I could just do a search. And then whenever you ask somebody, they're like, "That's that weird stuff. Who knows anything about that?" So I went to the Massachusetts College of Art, and I saw Tron and The Last Starfighter, and I love those movies.
Me too.
And I was like, "Oh, computer animation, that looks super cool. I'd love to really get into that." I was also the only person going to these animation festivals, local animation festivals. And there was this little company that no one had ever heard of, Pixar, that was, doing all their little animation things. But there's no animation programs or anything. Yeah. And they had very rudimentary stuff. Come to find out now that a lot of what Pixar and some of those companies did, they were actually developing their own hardware and software and or pushing the industry to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, so the closest thing to creating those types of things and being there was also the overwhelming, voice in my head to do something practical.
Yeah.
Right. And that was, graphic design was sort of right down the middle of being able to sort of help people tell stories while still having some sort of creative input to it.
Yeah. And then you could also use it as a day job, I guess.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I could be employed, and
which is nice occasionally.
Which is nice occasionally to have a regular income. I will say that the one of my greatest regrets is I was, walking through school, and there was just a black and white flyer. Someone had photocopied a flyer and stuck it to one of the columns that Disney and this little known company, Pixar, were looking for interns. They wanted people to come and, and be a part of the group and learn from them and stuff. Yeah. And I was like, Disney, no way. I don't care for anything Disney does, really. But man, I've always enjoyed. And this is still pre
everything. It's pre Cinderella, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, stuff like that's it.
Yeah, so I didn't care for that, but and Pixar hadn't made Toy Story at this point, right? Yeah. So it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, California, I don't want to go to California. and I just never looked into it or anything. It's kind of something I always think about every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, you could have never known, but that's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. I mean, I loved all the stuff they had done. Like I said, I was going to the animation festivals.
Absolutely. But also, like going as an intern is that's a tough spot because, as an intern, you would, in most places you would be unpaid. And that's a privileged spot to be able to do something like that, dedicate to show, because it's not just like going to work. Like you have to like try to prove that that you'd be integral as part of the team. So it's like you have to go above and beyond and that kind of stuff, and you're not getting paid. So that's a rough spot.
And here we are, almost, it's like 35 years later, and like this is the advice that I can give my kids now, and I'll say it now because I think it's worthwhile to know. But
absolutely,
if you like see something that you're interested in, funded or unfunded, there's so many things out there that are trying to pay you to do stuff when you're young, right? You can apply for all kinds of grants and things like that. I'm sure if I had pushed hard enough that I could have found someone would have funded me to go ahead and do that, whether it was it could have been a combination of some kind of travel funding, some kind of just the flat grant for an artist living, or, et cetera, et cetera. So I should have pushed a little harder.
That's fair. Well, yeah. So don't let practicality get in the way of your dreams.
Nope. Nope.
That's fair. All right. So, that gets into like your writing. So dark pulp is the way you described it. Tell us a little bit about some stories that we could find or that you're working on right now.
Well, first I'll explain dark pulp because
Sure.
that's just like my own little phrase because
Yeah.
I'd always enjoyed stuff like The Shadow or Doc Savage, this sort of in pulpy adventures.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I started to realize, just through life's experience, that man, these people, they're doing some, they're dealing with all kinds of violence and murder and trauma and stuff, and they're unaffected.
Yeah.
They're just ready to leap into the next adventure. And it's sort of the flip side to that, the dark stuff is the deterioration of the character over time.
Yeah.
So there would be a beginning and an end for an adventurer like that, and I've always sort of liked at least to craft a story that's got that kind of really thriller, exciting feeling, but there's a cost.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, and in a lot of ways I feel like the word I'm looking for is escaping me. It devalues almost the experiences that they're going through if it doesn't show the
Yes.
like the impact on the characters themselves.
Right.
And I really like that art in general is kind of taking a step in that direction. But that's really cool. I'm glad. Like it. I'm interested. I want to check it out now.
That's usually what I'm trying to do. Like
Yeah.
if I'm like with the series that I'm writing and any novel that I write. So I have 3 novels that are out in the universe right now: Lightning Wears a Red Cape, and Blood for the Sun and All the Dead Men. And Blood for the Sun and All the Dead Men are 2 books in a trilogy. I have yet to write the 3rd one.
Okay.
I'm currently working on a novella that's loosely based on my childhood, but sort of set 5 to 10 years prior, just so that I could dabble in all that music, right? Because I love the music of the 60s and the 70s.
Me too, man.
But at the time, I was too young to really experience that stuff when it was happening. Yeah. So that's currently what I'm working on. It's kind of a slipstream, weird sci-fi thing. And I'm writing it because I was almost, I always want to say I was forced to write it. But I had told a couple of anecdotes from my childhood and a couple of people that I respect, good friends and authors, that were like, man, that would probably make a really good story. You should write that. You should write that. You should write that. You should write that. And
you hear that enough, and
yeah, I sort of gave in and wrote it. As for things that I have kind of out in the world right now, in terms of short stories, there's I've got a story in an anthology called Fright Train. That's it's train themed, so you just have to include a train somehow. But it's a horror story. I'm really proud of a story I wrote for the Pixel Project, for an anthology called Giving the Devil His Due.
Okay.
And the Pixel Project is an online organization that is working to basically end domestic violence against women. So all of these stories are essentially comeuppance stories, and
those are my favorite.
I love revenge.
Me too.
Either revenge or consequences, and all of the stories are kind of somewhere in the spectrum of Twilight Zone-esque, and mine's is probably as close to I worked really hard to figure out how to do a lot of these things in here, so it's pretty close to just sort of straight livable horror,
Okay.
Let me see what else is out there. The Bad Book, that was an interesting one too. The Bad Book is an anthology written by edited by John F.D. Taff, who's a fabulous writer, a horror writer in his own right. And he had this idea to do an anthology based on basically inverted parables from the Bible.
Ooh.
Right. So everybody chose a parable and twisted it into something new. And so my story in that one is kind of a post-apocalyptic Conan revenge story, which was unexpected.
Yeah.
And they didn't expect to get something like that, but he enjoyed it. And it's based on the parable of the sower.
Oh, okay.
Which has to do with both money and nobody talks about the slaves,
Yeah.
but it has to do with money and slaves. So
Yeah.
I had a real good time with that. And a couple of magazines, like I said, one is in there's that story in Fire literary magazine that I'm
Yeah.
really proud of. Uniform. I got to thinking, like, it's really cool cyborgs in the military and stuff, but what happens when they're done?
Yeah.
Like, what you can't get those human parts back. So how do you retire? Um,
Who
so
does
it's
the upkeep?
yeah, so it's about a cyborg veteran. And another story in Galaxy's Edge that has to do with this is actually hard to explain. My daughter, when she was 4 or 5, she would say the most bizarre things. And like the rainbow clam or ants or peanut butter jelly. And I started writing them down, like just all random things,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just with the intent that one day I would do something with it. And I took all of that stuff. One of the things she mentioned was bone kite. And the story is called Bone Kite. And
Okay.
it's kind of a fantasy story that involves all of these elements. So I take all these elements and make them coherent in a way. And
It's like
then
writing
it becomes,
prompts from your daughter's brain.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So I hear, obviously, you've mentioned horror stories quite a few times. Are you a fan of horror, or?
It's so funny. This is how I end up getting. I won't say lumped in, but I'm traveling with the horror writers more often than not.
Yeah.
My first love had been science fiction,
Okay.
and I had always enjoyed science fiction, but I don't write much of it. I really like thrillers and dark thrillers and certain kinds of horror stories. I love monster stories.
Yeah.
You
Kind
know,
of go
trying
where
to
your brain takes you.
yeah,
Your brain
trying to
is
make
forcing
sense of a
you in this
monster and
way.
stuff. Yeah. I guess it's all kind of in the realm of speculative fiction. Like I
Yeah.
rarely write something that's like straight fiction, but it happens every once in a
Yeah.
while.
What like is there any particular science fiction or stuff that you're into right now, or that you're looking forward to that's coming out soon, or be it books or television, movies, shows,
Yeah.
whatever,
Um,
games?
so upcoming science fiction in terms of media, I think, um, man, I just enjoyed Foundation a lot.
Okay.
And a lot of people complain that it's not like the books, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I enjoyed the books.
In
I
the Wheel of
enjoyed
Time,
the
in
show.
the Wheel of Time community, we refer to them as book cloaks. I don't know. Have you read Wheel of Time? Okay,
Not yet.
so there's no, it's fine. There's there's plenty of both attendees and guests and even staff members at JordanCon who have not read Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time is just a small part of JordanCon, but in the world of the Wheel of Time, the White Cloaks are essentially the KKK of of the Wheel of Time world. They're staunchly against people who can use magic, and they're called the White Cloaks. So the people who are like gung ho, it's the book or nothing type people. In the Wheel of Time community, we refer to them as the book cloaks.
That's good. That makes sense.
Yeah. Anywho.
Anywho, I haven't read or watched The Expanse. I watched a little bit of it, and I have an Amazon subscription, so I'm looking forward to actually watching that series. But in terms of books, I'm not even sure where I got my hands on this one, but it's called Halfway Home, and it's by Hugh Howey. And I just love the concept of there's these colonists who are going across the galaxy to settle a planet, right? And this is a typical type of thing to think about.
Yeah.
But about 15 years in, there's an explosion. It kills most of them. It destroys a majority of their supplies. 60 awaken, and they have to figure out how to make this work, right? So that sounded like a lot of fun science fiction.
That's pretty cool.
Nicholas Kaufman, The Hungry Earth. I have an abiding interest in mushrooms.
That's cool.
And this is probably the first in a series. We'll see how he's going to have to see how it goes, of course. Yeah. But so this is about a fungus that is wreaking havoc, and it's starting in a town. They need to stop this from spreading across the country and all that stuff. But it turns people into things. So I'm looking forward to seeing what his take on that is. We've seen so many virus type things happening, and just to see what he does with this, because there's a lot of different things happening, or it's causing a lot of different problems.
Yeah.
And because in these types of things, when I'm asked about books, I always include nonfiction stuff. This is a thick book that I'm looking forward to reading one of these days. So 400 Souls. It's got a lot of essays in it by a lot of different thinkers. And it's a community history of African America from 1619 to 2019. So that should be really interesting. One of the things I like to read is history, political history, socio-political history, which is often more terrible than any horror that's written, or stranger than any fiction.
100%. I remember as a kid when I started figuring out that, like, because they always say the winners write the history, like when it comes to like wars and stuff, historical stuff. But then you start realizing that a lot of stuff has been changed, even in our own stuff, even recent stuff. So I took a liking into really trying to go out and look into like real non-watered down, non-changed, non-whitewashed history, and that's something that I've been really diving into too in the last 7
and from different perspectives too,
Yeah.
because not only will someone who's not part of the mainstream of history look at something a little differently, but their experiences are completely outside of what's what we've surface learned, and yet it's still influencing things today in the way we act and the way we think. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's good for everyone to learn and read, just to help understanding, in my opinion, at least. All right. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so I've been ending these interviews with a little batch of questions. I don't know if you've ever seen Inside the Actor's Studio with James Lipton. Yeah. Okay. So I grew up watching that with my mom. I've really just always enjoyed these like looks into people's minds, especially people, famous people or people that have accomplished things. And this has been really fun for me to do with you and everyone that I've been able to do over the last couple of weeks. But in the end of his videos, he asked this batch of questions, which I pared down a little bit. So because there was a lot more. But I kept the ones that I kind of enjoyed. All right. So the first one is, what is your favorite word?
Backpfeifen Geizig,
German.
Which I'm sure a lot of people have heard. It gets kind of popular on the internet every once in a while, but it's a German portmanteau that means a face in need of a slap or a fist. and it's it's funny. And I don't so much like it because of that. I love these words that encompass feelings or some complexity that you can't just drop down into one thing. And we were kind of missing that in the English language, right?
Absolutely. German has a lot of good ones like that.
Oh yeah. So German, Native American languages, a number of Asian languages. We just don't have like any words that we have that we use are from somewhere else.
Oh
right?
Yeah,
like zeitgeist.
Yep.
Which isn't actually common usage, right? It's not a word that's commonly used. And I feel like
you've heard it before.
Yeah.
Most people at least would say, I've heard that word before.
Yeah, and we only have one word for love, and a whole lot of words for hate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, definitely English is one of my least favorite languages. I've been trying over the years to learn others. My dyslexia has made it hard, but that's why I always appreciate reading like multiple translations of things. Like I watch a lot of anime and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Japanese, right.
Because it's like when they directly translate things, a lot of stuff is lost. So you
Yeah.
have to go and really read translations from native speakers so that they can be
Yeah.
like, well, here's what it says, but here's what it kind of means, and then stuff like that. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
my youngest daughter is learning Japanese, and she's good enough that she can kind of understand what's happening.
jealous.
We were watching something, and uh, two of the characters were speaking Japanese. It wasn't a Japanese language
Yeah.
thing. Um, and one said one thing and the other said another, and the subtitles didn't match what they said. And she was like, oh, no, that's not what that means, And she watches a ton of anime and stuff
That's so
now.
cool.
So, yeah.
I'm jealous of being able to learn it at a young language because that's usually like, the best, experts say the best time to learn a language is when you're young.
Yep.
And
Yep.
oh,
Pick it
man.
up.
Yeah, I wish that's really cool though.
Mhm.
All right. So the next one is, what is your least favorite word?
Literally.
Because everyone literally uses it wrong.
I literally hate the word literally.
I can feel
And you know,
it.
we were just talking about English, and English is actually a very literal language. And it's really hard. I think we have a lot of trouble communicating with each other because there's so much subcontext and, all these sort of between the lines hidden meanings. And it make it difficult to be direct or speak literally.
Yeah. Especially when people don't, like if you have a conversation between someone who really tries to read in between the lines and someone who doesn't really put hidden meaning in what they're saying.
Right.
So a lot of stuff could get lost in just
Oh, yeah.
not understanding people,
Right.
even that
It's
speak
totally
your own language.
Yeah, it's literally misunderstood.
That's great. So what is the first thing you notice about another person when you meet them?
Probably the way they move. Just getting from point A to B, and this. I don't know why. I notice these things, like
Body language?
how they walk and how they move, and it's literally just how they're getting around and how they're doing things. Like when someone has a really bad shake, or I start to wonder, like, I wonder why. It could be a lot of caffeine. It could be, a nicotine withdrawal. It could be something more serious than something they did to themselves. And it just kind of leads to, I don't know, the way I organize my head to try not to put more meaning on somebody than they're putting out.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to try to take you as you are right here. That's how. Do you speak slowly? Fine. You speak slowly. I'll accept that. Do you speak quickly? Fine. I'll accept that,
You kind of tell a story about the people in your head. I wonder where that comes from.
but it takes an effort not to try to assign that story to somebody, because you don't know. You have no idea what this story really is. People
watching must be fun for you.
I'm also concerned about fitness and health and stuff like that, so it just happens.
Well, as in depth you are into martial arts, I'm sure we got to. By the way, I wanted to mention before we go on, we got to, like, you're in Georgia, you're a good-looking guy, and you're into martial arts. We got to get you in a Marvel movie, and you're into comics. We got to get you into a Marvel movie. I mean, at least as an extra, like, just they film enough there.
I am getting up in years and don't move nearly as well as I used to. So
that's fair. That's entirely fair. I feel
that's what computer graphics are for, though.
There you go. All right. If outside of the plethora of things that you've done in your life and that you're good at, is there any other profession that you've wanted or wished you can attempt?
Yeah, marine biology.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I had a very early interest in the ocean, the things in it, in water in general, and again, it's just not the environment to be encouraged to do such things. But in hindsight, I'm like, I could have done all those things. I could have done everything I was interested in.
That's awesome.
Which is what my kids are doing now. So
yeah, I mean, you pass it on. That's it's a one step better.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And then the last one that I've been doing is, what is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word is everybody's favorite curse word. Fuck. right?
It's so diverse. It's the most diverse of the words. It could be anything.
You can wedge it into any meaning at all.
Yep. You
Right?
could put it right in the middle of a word, and it just makes the
Right.
word even better.
That's right. So and it's ironic that that's sort of unacceptable language,
Yeah.
but it's English that's really broadly applicable.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say I would say that's probably one of my favorite parts of the English language is how you can just like cut it apart and still make sense to people when you say
Right.
abso-fucking-lutely or something like that. Everyone will understand exactly what you mean. And depending on the connotation, it could be great or it could be terrible when you say that word.
Exactly.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And if you've liked this interview, make sure to check out Erik and all his work. Like he said, it can be found in Fire magazine, Apex magazine, Galaxy's Edge, Lamplight. He also appears on the Nightlight podcast. And, make sure to check out all his books. We'll have all the links around this, but his website is ericnunnally.us, and you can find him on Twitter at Erik Nunnally. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Thom.